Julian Lennon's life has always been overshadowed by his legendary father, a fractured family, and public expectations. When John Lennon left Julian and his mother Cynthia for Yoko Ono, Julian's childhood became marked by abandonment and struggle, far from the glamorous life many imagined. Growing up famous yet largely alone, Julian carried this pain into adulthood. Now, he speaks openly about the people who shaped and sometimes tormented him, revealing a story of family, betrayal, and a search for understanding. At just 5 years old, Julian faced his father's absence as John Lennon's divorce shook not only Beatles fans, but Julian's entire world. For Julian, the heartbreak wasn't about the band's breakup, it was the raw reality of being left behind. Cynthia, raising Julian on a modest income, sacrificed greatly to provide stability amid uncertainty. Despite assumptions that a Beatles son lived in luxury, Julian endured bullying fueled by envy. These hardships built his resilience and taught him that fame often hides loneliness. The contrast between John Lennon's public image as a peace-loving icon and his private neglect left deep scars. Their relationship remained distant and strained throughout Julian's youth, with only occasional visits or calls. Meanwhile, John embraced his new family with Yoko Ono and son Sean, a role Julian watched from afar with pain. Publicly, John stepped away from music to be a devoted father, something Julian never experienced, fueling his harsh view of his father's hypocrisy. In interviews, Julian has pointed out the painful contradiction of John Lennon preaching peace and love to the world while leaving his first family fractured. One cruel remark, John reportedly telling Julian he was the product of a whiskey bottle while describing Sean as born from love, has haunted him for decades. Whether true or not, the words symbolize the emotional distance between father and son. Yet their bond wasn't entirely broken. In the mid-70s, during John's separation from Yoko Ono, his girlfriend May Pang encouraged him to reconnect with Julian. For a brief time, they shared moments of laughter and music. John even gifted Julian a Gibson Les Paul guitar and a drum machine. These were some of Julian's happiest memories with his father. But the warmth was short-lived. When John reunited with Yoko, the connection faded once again. By his mid-teens, Julian received occasional calls from John in New York. On one call, John played a new track over the phone, filled with optimism and joy, a rare glimpse of hope for rebuilding their bond. But everything changed on the night of December 8, 1980. After signing an autograph for a fan, Mark David Chapman, outside his Manhattan home earlier that day, John was fatally shot by Chapman that evening. The world was stunned by the loss of one of music's greatest icons. While the world mourned, Julian faced a deeply personal tragedy. Living at his mother's house in Ruthin, he had been looking forward to seeing his father again. Just days earlier, John had called, playing Just Like Starting Over, with energy and joy. That night, Julian was jolted awake not by a call, but by the chimney collapsing into his attic room, an eerie, symbolic moment of destruction. Shortly after, he learned John was gone. The last voice he heard was filled with hope and promise. Julian has said those final conversations are etched forever in his mind, not only because they were their last, but because they hinted at the relationship they might have had if given the chance. After John Lennon's death, the world's focus was on Yoko Ono and Sean, his young son. But for Julian, the aftermath was a harsh reality of legal battles, financial exclusion, and painful reminders of his place in his father's new life. When John's will was read, Julian discovered he'd been left nothing directly. The entire estate, worth around £220 million, was under Yoko's control, with Julian receiving only a £100,000 trust fund, a fraction of the vast fortune from Beatles royalties and John's solo work. For Julian, this wasn't just about money. It was about recognition and feeling acknowledged by his father. Meanwhile, Sean grew up in the same home as John during his final years, surrounded by the affection Julian had always missed. Yoko, as executor of the estate, held the keys to both John's fortune and personal belongings, locking much of his legacy away from Julian. Determined to claim what he felt was rightfully his, Julian took legal action, engaging in a grueling battle that lasted nearly 2 decades. Public opinion often misunderstood his motives, assuming he sought an undeserved windfall. but Julian was fighting for a fair share and access to letters, instruments, and mementos that held personal meaning. In the mid-1990s, a settlement reportedly worth £20 million gave Julian financial security, but it couldn't erase the bitterness of having to fight for what should have been his from the start. A battle marked by resentment and reluctant peace. Julian's feelings toward Yoko Ono remained deeply bitter for years. She was the woman his father chose over his mother, the symbol of the breakup that fractured his family. The long legal struggle only deepened his mistrust, every letter and negotiation reinforcing the distance between them. Julian has never hidden his feelings toward Yoko Ono, admitting he struggled to see her as anything but an adversary, with control over his connection to his father. For years, family gatherings were polite exercises in avoidance, brief smiles, careful words, minimal interaction. Yet in September 2010, at the opening of Julian's photography exhibition, a surprising moment of calm unfolded. His mother Cynthia, half-brother Sean, Mei Pang, and Yoko all came together in one room. The evening passed without conflict. Smiles were shared, conversations held, even brief embraces exchanged. It wasn't reconciliation, but proof they could coexist without reopening old wounds. Over time, Julian's love for Sean softened his view of Yoko. He realized that harboring hostility would only hurt his brother, with whom he shared a genuinely warm bond. Julian explained that hurting Sean's mother would also hurt Sean, and that was a line he refused to cross. Their relationship remains complex, shaped by decades of history and old scars, but Julian found a fragile peace, not through full forgiveness, but by choosing not to reopen wounds. Despite growing up apart, Julian and Sean have built a bond based on mutual respect and shared loss. Julian once told Esquire they've never fought, a rare warmth in their story of tension and grief. While Julian grew up distant from their father, Sean had daily access to John Lennon's love until his death in 1980. Instead of dividing them, these differences fostered empathy. Both brothers understand the challenges of living in the public eye and defining their own identities beyond their famous father. Their relationship strengthened over time, with moments like Julian attending Sean's concerts helping bridge the gap. Julian's peace with Yoko Ono stems from wanting to protect Sean. In 2021, watching the Beatles get back transformed Julian's feelings toward their father. Today, Julian honors John's legacy through music and storytelling, while Sean manages his father's music catalog. Bound by blood and resilience, they carry the Lennon name with dignity. Julian's journey reflects fractured bonds, legal battles, and hard-won peace. Though some wounds remain, he has found his own way to honor the past. So, what do you think? Has Julian truly found peace with his family's complicated history? Or do old resentments still linger? Share your thoughts, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories like this.